Hello, my name is Courtney Williams. I am the host of America's Kids Belongs webinar series called FosterCon, and we're in a new series called Navigating. And through this series, we are going to have multiple conversations regarding different things in foster care and adoption. I have been a foster mom for many years now, and also adoptive mom of 6 kids, mom to 9. And I love having conversations like this. One of the great things that I get to do is be part of our foster friendly podcast. And on the podcast, we've had so many wonderful conversations. A couple of them we've decided to put together and turn them into a webinar. And that is going to be the first of the webinars in this navigating series for today, called Navigating Electronics and Sex Trafficking. This is a heavy topic, and I do want to put out the little disclaimer before we even get started that if you have little kids in the room or in the car here listening to this, viewer listener discretion advised that we are going to be talking about some hard things. So we have a lineup of 2 podcasts that we put together to make this one webinar. We did a podcast with Holly Strand, who is a forensic examiner in the state of South Dakota. And our conversation with Holly talks about why is foster care a pipeline to sex trafficking, and what can we do as foster parents, adoptive parents, to understand that, to come around alongside the kiddos that are in our care and help them and support them. It is a very fascinating conversation, but also very eye-opening and maybe a little bit daunting. After that podcast, we actually thought, you know what, that was great and wonderful, but we had a lot of people saying, what do we do now? And so then we did a follow-up podcast, and that is where we brought in Chad Rykluski and Kay David, and they worked together and co-authored a book called Cyber Smart Parenting, Protecting Your Child in the Digital Age. So following our interview with Holly, we're then going to show you our interview with Chad and Kay, and they just dive into how we can be smart as parents and caregivers for protecting our homes. And they give us very practical tools. Their book is amazing. I've read their book. I highly suggest it. We talk more about that in this conversation as well. But just got a little understanding of what you're in for today, of an interview with Holly, and understanding a lot of the stuff behind this, and the how and the why, and how the pimps choose their girls or sometimes boys, and how that all works. Again, a very interesting conversation, and then following that up with some tips for you in your home. So buckle up, get ready. This is probably going to be maybe one of the heaviest topics that we have covered so far in our webinars that we have done. So here you go.
Hello, and welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and I've got my Courtney. I'm forgetting to get adjectives now. So I've
That's okay.
got.
Sometimes I don't want the adjective.
We're gonna stop doing that. Okay, I've got my brilliant co-host. How about that for Courtney
That's a
with
good
me
one.
today? Yes. And Courtney, we've got I think a very interesting guest today, and we're tackling something that I don't know that we've ever talked about this before in all the podcasts that we've done. But today we have Holly Strand, and Holly, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. Yeah. So to our audience, here's where this is going to go. Holly is a forensic examiner for the Pennington County Sheriff's Office, and so Pennington County is in the southwest corner of South Dakota, and she has been assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and she's been working in this field for 26 years. And has held the positions of a police officer, forensic interviewer, counselor with extensive history in providing therapy for individuals in the correctional system. So today's interview is going to be about those things, how kids who are in foster care are at risk for the things that Holly oversees and tries to prevent. So Holly, thank you for coming. I'm very interested in what we're going to hear from you today.
Before we get into that hard, deep topic, Holly, tell us just a little bit about yourself and your family and kind of your life today.
Sure. I married my best friend, and we have 5 kiddos. They are 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
Wow.
Yes. That I have any hair left is a miracle. 2 biological, 3 adopted from foster care. So
Okay.
just have that background. Incredibly busy, just running. But
Yeah.
when you have 5 kids, I think that just explains everything right there, especially in that order.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a daughter who's in a similar situation. The kids are younger, but they're all like 5 kids too, and they're all a year apart. So, and 3 adopted, 2 biological. So it's chaos.
It
So,
is. It is.
so I can't imagine what your life is like. Yes.
It's good to feel heard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You are not bored. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
No.
Well, yeah, so let's stay there a little bit longer. I mean, that's not a common thing that people say, "Hey, let's adopt a few kids, all close in age." So, how did that happen for you?
So interesting, when we had our 2 littles who are, now 14, 15, um, we just figured while we were in diapers and bottles, we would
Keep
foster
going.
diapers
Uh
and
huh.
bottles. Uh,
Huh.
our youngest daughter, we got when she was 2, adopted her when she's 4, she's now 13, and
Okay.
then our 2 littlest, which are 10 and 11, we just got 2 years ago, and it was so oh, yeah, it was so bizarre because it was like we're gonna sell our house, and in the middle of it, saw these pictures of these 2 little guys and just thought, "I don't know, I think we're supposed to do this," and yeah,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
it would be 2 years ago in January. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, well, God bless you. Thanks for stepping up and um, being brave.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I wish more people were. I just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, today we are going to be talking about a very heavy topic and something that
Mhm.
you're an expert on. And so I guess there's no good way to start than other just to start. So let's just lay the foundation a little bit and kind of the basics and uh, tell our audience just in general what is considered sex trafficking. When people hear sex trafficking, they probably have a particular scenario in their head, but I would love to hear how you define it, and maybe like what you consider to be the most likely kinds of scenarios that you see.
Sure, when you're looking at the legal definition, it's that exchange of goods. I mean, it can be for a ring, it could be for food, but the exchange of goods for a sexual act, if they're over the age of 18, you also have to prove fraud, force, or coercion. If they're under the age of 18, we don't need fraud, force, or coercion. And it can look any different way. There was a gal that had described it. She said that she started out and she said, I was a hotel room hoe. And I was like,
Mm,
what does that mean? And she said, well, you're sold out of the room, which means they bring Johns to you. And then
mm,
talked about how in the casinos, then she was a carpet hoe. And that means she could walk into the casinos and around the casinos. They had broken her down enough that she could walk through the casinos without them fearing that she would take off. And then she could be a strip
mm,
hoe, which means she could work in the strip club or she could just walk outside. She could go with Johns and then she would come back. I think so many people have that vision of taken, that
yes.
they're just that they're taken in, and that's not necessarily the case. Most of them, and the sad part is like when you're doing interviews, you think that in their mind there's going to be this, oh man, I can't believe you came and rescued me.
Rescued me.
I'm
Right.
so happy to be here. Thank you. It's more like, why do you call me a victim? I'm not a victim. Even some girls have gone as far to say it. One young lady I was talking with said, "Nobody put a gun to my head. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I left, I turned the tricks, I took the cash and I came back. There wasn't a gun to my head, but negated all of the stuff that went with that, like the psychological just brainwashing and that
Mm,
breaking down of her spirit to the point where, broken bones, broken fingers, broken face, all to the point where yeah, now she comes right back.
Yeah.
yeah. I think just you sharing some of those details is helps people understand. Oh, so that's what it's like. Because I think you're exactly right. I hear people like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing to go in and rescue these girls, mostly girls, not exclusively, and just think. like, oh, they're so relieved that you came in and saved the day. When it's, like I said, what's happened to them in their own hearts and minds has been distorted. And then, of course, there's a lot more to it afterwards. Even when a youth child is rescued, uh,
Definitely.
after, well, it's the aftermath. It's receiving them, and that long healing process that's far more difficult than the
Definitely.
rescuing, I assume. Yeah. So yeah, if you can, as we continue to go, would love to hear some examples that, of course, whatever you feel is appropriate
Sure.
to share. So yeah.
Yeah, this is also interesting, Holly. So I grew up in North Dakota. I only moved away from North Dakota 8 years ago, and my husband and I were teaching a Sunday school class at our church, probably about 15 years ago now. And the book was kind of similar to Brian's, which we'll get into in a little bit, but it had different topics that were related to the title as orphan care. But and one of them was sex trafficking, and we were sitting in this room in North Dakota, and all these people around us kind of shut out. And we noticed this, and my husband
Hmm.
started asking them questions, and they were saying they didn't think this was an issue in our area. And they're like, "We
Mm,
live in small town North Dakota. This isn't a thing. Like, why are we even talking about this topic?" Do you find that? Like, do you feel like people just don't even realize
yeah.
that this is happening in our own backyards, in our own neighborhoods across the United States?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to people not wanting to believe it. You know,
Mm,
our task force is assigned everything that involves child pornography, child exploitation, child solicitation, and child sex trafficking. And even in those cases, there's people that are just they do not want to believe that stuff happens in their community. And the idea of somebody selling another human being just is too much for people. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people sit. As soon as we have cases come forward and people start to see the prevalence of it, of, this individual was operating for a long time, or when we do our undercover operations and our team will put ads to sell kids or buy kids or pretend to be kids online, and
mm,
regardless of where we're at in the state, just the amount of people that respond to the ads. And people are like,
my.
"Are you serious? This is South Dakota." Absolutely. And I remember one case, it was during one of the operations, and it was a guy that wasn't here for the Sturgis motorcycle rally. He was just coming through town and had gone into one of the ads and wanted to purchase two young girls. And all I could think is if you're coming to Rapid City, you've never been here before, and you go onto these sites that are there and you meet up with who you believe is a John, how many other small towns have you gone to? Small
Mm,
cities and been
hmm.
successful about just driving someplace because he worked on a cruise. So he was just going basically from site to site. And not a big issue
Mm.
with just kind of coming into a town he's never been in and felt comfortable enough. And just that question of like, how many times have you done this before? In those small towns that you're talking about, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, places that you don't think compared to New York, Chicago, LA, San Antonio.
Yeah, curious. I mean, how does that even happen? How do these predators um, find these? Again, I keep saying women usually, but I know it's more than that. But how do the predators find their victims, and how do they groom them? How's that all work?
Sure. I remember going to a training and the FBI had sat down with this guy that was a pimp, a trafficker. And one of the questions that they asked was like, "How do you select?" And,
Mm-hmm.
how do you pick? And his response was very crass, but he said, "I can make anybody a hoe." He's like, "I can make your mom a hoe." He said, if you break down somebody, you rape them a bunch and in front of a bunch of people, you videotape it." He was basically talking about breaking the moral spirit within a person, to break
Wow.
them down to the point where they have nothing and they're willing to do anything because you're the only thing that they have left. And so he's just talking about this methodical, kind of this systematic
So
method of
evil.
breaking people down. But so he said, now if you were to get somebody who has a tight family connection, right? They're loved, they're wanted, people are looking for them. That is a whole lot harder to break them down because
Okay.
they know that they have family out there. They know they have people looking for them. They know that they are wanted and valued. Compare that to, and he said, a runaway girl whose
Mhm.
family's not even looking for her. She doesn't have food. She doesn't have a place to live. And you show up and you buy her McDonald's, you buy her something, you get her high, you give her cigarettes, you get her some clothes at Goodwill. And guess what? You just bought her loyalty. And then when he turns around and says something like, I can't pay for the hotel room tonight. Could you help me out? I would never lose respect for you. I would never, ever lose respect for you. She's like, absolutely. And then what happens? They do it over and over. And then
Mhm.
again, there's this flip in the switch of, if my family found out that I did this, they wouldn't
Mhm.
love me anymore. But here's this guy that I do this and he still tells me he loves me afterwards.
Mhm.
And so it's frustrating because people will say, why is it that when we bring girls in, and this is nationwide, when people are, victim advocates are talking, why are they so um, protective of these traffickers? Why are they so
Mhm.
protective? Because they consider 'em mentors, they consider them boyfriends, they consider them rescuers. Like, my family didn't come get me off the street, but this guy did. I don't
Mhm.
like doing this stuff, but like, he's the only guy I have, and he
Mhm.
takes care of me. So it's psychologically twisted. And then when you take that a step further, when it comes to foster care, there was a national speaker, and this was years ago, and she painted this picture of why it was so easy for foster kids to go straight into trafficking. And she said, she's like, look, when I was a foster kid, she said there was an exchange of money for my presence in someone's house. She said
Okay.
foster parents
Yes.
got paid to
Yes.
take me.
Yeah.
She
Yes.
goes, no different. She goes, no different from an exchange of money for my presence in somebody's hotel room, backseat, or alley. She
Right.
said, when I was in foster care, I had a worker who told me what I could wear, where I was going to go to school, where I would live. She said,
Mhm.
no different from having a pimp. And she said, and when I was in foster care, I didn't have permission to pick up the phone and call my mom or my siblings. She said I had to ask permission. She goes, no different from having a pimp. She said, you can't believe how similar trafficking felt to being in the foster care system. And so then you look and you're like, it makes perfect sense why
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that
many foster kids that end up in the trafficking world.
Yes.
gosh, yeah. That what you just said, how similar it felt, and to from being foster care to being trafficked. That's man, that's
Yeah,
scary.
It is scary. Yeah.
it
Yeah,
is.
you can see why it'd be so easy to be victimized and not even feel like it. Like this doesn't feel that different. I hate that. Gosh.
Yeah. And to wonder if anybody is looking out for them.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And if I can take it a step further, I think about my own kids, and so I do a lot of presentations on internet safety,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, if you were to boil all the water out of trafficking, it is the exploitation of the vulnerable. Okay. So I look at my own kids and the amount of supervision it takes to navigate technology with kids, right? And
Mhm.
so there's two parts of it. Is one is when you have little boys that become addicted to porn when they're little, okay?
Mhm.
They learn to objectify, right? You
Mm.
can't purchase a person like a pizza unless you see him as an object to be purchased first. Okay?
Mhm.
So a couple weeks ago, I went through a 9-year-old's phone, and he had a porn collection that would rival most adult men who have looked through their phone.
Mm.
And
Mm.
all I can think is, at this point in the game, people are actors and they are objects to be used. And then you have young girls. This was, I think, last year. My coworker, he was like, "Hey, Holly, check this out." He said, "I have an 11-year-old girl's phone. She has 52 tabs open on her internet browser, and over 20 of those are porn sites. And both of us commented on how normal that is. Both boys and girls, their addiction and their fascination with porn." And so when you lay that out, when you have kids in the foster care system that are not supervised, that do not have people advocating, supervising, looking through their devices and telling them like that's not what God intended is for people to be treated as objects. Like you were never meant to be treated as an object. That's
Mhm.
that's that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not what sex is. That's not what relationships look like. You
Mhm.
think about how many times foster kids just in general are left out of that supervision. And so when they watch that kind of garbage and they don't have a good solid family letting them know that's not how anybody should be treated, that seems normal. So when somebody treats them that way, they've been watching that for years. And then when you have these 18-year-olds that are getting busted in pornography or prostitution stings at 18, this seems normal.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think it's just that it's multifaceted. There's so many things that play into why our foster kids are so vulnerable when it comes to trafficking, exploitation, online solicitation.
Mm.
So, okay, I want to do a little bit of camping out here. Just here you are, an expert in internet crimes, and you're a mom. What advice would you give our listeners who do have kids that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old? It's like, do you do, and what should parents do to say, hey, it's it's a dangerous world out there, and here's how to help protect your kids from getting into pornography.
I think the top thing I would say is that it's not about trusting your kids. It's about, do you trust the world with your kids?
Mm.
So when we look at pornography in general, people are like, I don't think my kids would go look for porn, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
but if you know how digital advertising works, you know that porn is looking for kids. Okay.
Mm.
So digital advertising, the way it works, it's going to go through these ad companies, find their way. They go through all of my stuff, right? All of my emails, all of my text messages, websites, histories, everything. And they look at me and they're like, she's married. She has 5 kids. She works law enforcement, right?
Mhm.
Public service, and they basically give me ads that are meant to reflect my interests and desires. Okay. They also
Yep.
reflect what I can afford. So I never get ads for luxury cruises, expensive jewelry, yachts, mansions, because they know I can. I mean, they could advertise to me all day, but they know I can't afford it. Um, and the only way these ad companies get paid is if I click on those, right? If I follow through. Okay. So follow me with this. They estimate that within a 99% degree accuracy, they can name every person's device on the planet. Like they can look at a device and say, I know that Brian owns this device. I know that Courtney owns this device. Okay.
Okay.
So if you go with me on this, then why is it that an 8-year-old, in which a tablet that belongs to an 8-year-old, nobody
Yep.
uses it but the 8-year-old, why would an 8-year-old get pop-ups from a porn site? I mean, when you think about that, you're like, it seems accidental, but it's not. In
Well,
fact,
that's
there's a saying in the field that if you get a kid clicking when you're young, you have a customer for life. Because again, it's just that
Mm.
understanding that if I can get little kids looking at images and videos, by the time they have money, disposable income, they will be, what they're looking is to produce a whale. Now, if I can take you back in time to the tobacco industry, what was interesting is the tobacco industry was accused of catering to kids, like they were
Mhm.
marketing to kids. And they said, no, we're not. We're not marketing to kids. But then when they were subpoenaing emails, they found that the executives in the tobacco industry were referring to teenagers as the replacement smokers. In fact, they
Mhm.
said it was easier to get kids to try smoking and be addicted at the age of 14 than it was to get them to try at 24. So they started marketing to kids. The pornography industry understands that if you can get a kid looking when they're young, they will constantly seek content, which pornography, escort, sex trafficking, all the same industry. So how do you get individuals to purchase other people or to be subscribers to porn stars, OnlyFans, all of those industries? You have to get them clicking when they're young. because they have to look at other human beings as objects to be used for their entertainment. And so I tell parents all the time, if you don't understand what your kids are up against, it is a spiritual battlefield that your kid is wandering on, and they cannot handle it alone. I mean, in our home, we use gab phones and bark phones.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that? I honestly don't know what
Sure,
that is.
those phones are factory created. Like our gab phone is Samsung, and there's no store. My kids can't go download Snapchat. In fact, they can't download any apps and they can't go on the internet. So what's interesting is so when my son gets a message from one of his buddies and it's a YouTube video, I can watch the YouTube video because I'll get a link that he was sent to something to go online, and then I'll show him the video if it's appropriate and say, "Hey, given that your digital footprint, right? College interviewers and job interviewers are going to see this. What do you think they would like you to see or say to this video?" Right?
Mm.
And just
Mhm.
teaching our kids and training them up. And so I think parents are so worried that their kids will be left behind. Um, if I
Mm.
could share with you that one year we were selling a 13-year-old girl, and this guy that they're talking to makes this comment to who he believes is a pimp. And he makes a comment like, if you want to stay in the room and watch, you can. And we're like, man, who are we dealing with? He just asked the pimp to watch him have sex with a 13-year-old. And they do the arrest, the takedown, they bring him in for the interview. And when they asked him what his deal was with why did you want a pimp to watch you have sex with a 13-year-old? He starts talking about his porn addiction. And he's like, do you know how porn works? You watch it, and then like in a couple months it gets boring. So you have to find something else and that gets boring. And then you find something else and that gets boring. You find something else. He said, try doing that since you were 13. He said, I
Mm.
take Viagra sometimes and that doesn't even work. He said, I just figured if she was 13 and Pimp was watching and I took Viagra, it'd be just different enough. He was only 24 years old. Like, as I'm watching the interview, alls I could think is, like, that could be any of our kids. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy or their kids. But what we're seeing is that our kids are starting so young, being overexposed, that to purchase another human being or to watch random people have sex is very normal. So trying to get parents to realize what their kids are up against, it's hard because a lot of parents, they're so about the convenience of cell phones that they're not willing to look at the dangerous side of them.
Yeah, I think what's hitting me is, everything you said is like, yeah, I know that happens, but I think the thing that's hitting me is just how calculated all this is, and
Very.
how and how it's targeting really young kids,
Mhm.
and I mean, it's just it's so wickedly evil, and that it's calculated just seems to make it even that much worse. I loved how you said at the beginning there that this isn't about do you trust your kids, it's do you trust the people who are trying to reach your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way. It's like, well, heck no, I don't.
No.
Especially after talking to you for 10
Yeah.
minutes. Like,
Well, and I tell parents, like, can you imagine somebody knocking on your door and saying, "Hey, can I go in your child's bedroom and hang out with them for a little bit?" Parents
right,
would be calling 911, but
right.
they give
They
the
do it
phone.
every
Yeah.
Use
day
the
with their phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I use the example of this, when I present, but, I asked a mom, I was like, "Do me a favor, your young daughter's phone," I said, "Do me a favor, just add up 5 days. Her text messages, instant messages, chat messages, emails, and phone calls just for 5 days." And her response, she was like, "It's 479." I was like, "That's normal." I mean, that's you think of emails and spam and all of the stuff. And one of the things that I tell parents is like when I was 12 years old, if you wanted to talk to me and I was in a classroom, you had to physically be in the classroom. If my
Mhm.
parents wanted to talk to me, they had to call the office, right?
Mhm.
Call the office and do all of that and get me a note. When I was a 12-year-old girl and you wanted to talk to me and I was in my bedroom, you called my parents' home phone and my
Mm.
parents answered and they decided who got to talk to me. Now, and I asked this mom, I said, "Can you imagine going and checking your mailbox on Friday and there's 479 envelopes or packages for your daughter?" I said, "Would you
Mhm.
let her open them?" And she said, "No." And I said, "But you let her open them all day long."
Yeah.
And, I explained that when our team does the undercover operations, they do not take a 12-year-old girl and put her downtown in the city we're working and hope somebody believes she's a prostitute. They use the same applications that our kids are all on. And so when you think of what our kids are doing online and what they're exposed to, it's like there's individuals engaging with them. It's not about you trusting your kid at all.
Yeah.
It's about knowing that, you're not filtering any of those messages.
So
Yeah.
how does this play out as they get a little bit older? So your oldest at home is 14, right? So I have 4 out of the house. They all turned 18, like, their senior year of high school, so I had them for a little bit. Our rule at our house is no phone till they're 16. When they're 16, no social media till they're 18. But now we have a daughter in the house who's it's her senior year, she's 17, and, like, she wants social media, and we've been saying not till 18, but then there's a part of me that's like, "Well, she's gonna be out of our house when she turns 18, so do I want her to have something so I can kinda guide her along that instead of, 'Oh, now you're out of the house, and here you go.'" Like, what do you suggest as they get a little bit older? Like, is there some, like, letting go a little bit, or, like, what would your suggestion be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the older they get and that prefrontal cortex starts to develop, I would say that, our job is to train. And so even with those phones of saying, okay, I'm going to enable Snapchat on your Bark phone or your Gab phone, I'm going to go ahead and put it on there. But if I see changes in who you are as a person, I'm going to go ahead and take it off. And really, I tell my kids, you don't have to have any electronics, right? We don't even have to have a PlayStation. If my relationship with you is so important that if our relationship changes because of electronics, then we're going to get rid of them. So I tell them, you have to show me you're mature enough and you're honest enough to have those. So just having those conversations, like, let's just run through some scenarios. What if you didn't ask for it, and boom, here's a naked picture of your friend on your phone. How are you gonna handle that? Let's just talk about it. And so I don't think that no technology is best, but I also think that unsupervised, it is that training our kids up and saying, I believe that you're ready to take that next step. Knowing that you're gonna falter and that's okay, but at least you're with me. Unfortunately, you see some kids at 8 years old are given smartphones, and there's no training, there's no
Yeah.
supervision.
Yeah. And I think the parents must just think my kid's just 8 years old. Like they're
What
not,
are you
Yeah.
gonna
they're,
do?
they're not at
S
risk, you know? It's,
76% of all child sexual abuse material, otherwise known as child pornography, 76% is prepubescent children. Only 24% is adolescent. And so I tell parents, because I've had parents come to me and say, Holly, when my kids are kind of young, when they get a little bit older and they're teenagers, I want to come listen to one of your presentations on internet safety. And I just kind of look at them and think, are you kidding? 76% of the child abuse material out there, the pictures and videos of our pre prepubescent kids. And so that's the target, that's the engagement.
yeah, I'm glad you're sharing that. Again, it's sick. But yeah, I can see lots of parents say exactly what that lady told you. Like they're 13. You're like, well, you're already 5 years behind. Gosh,
Yeah,
that's scary. Okay, so everything you shared obviously is relevant to every parent out there. But if we were to just talk about, okay, now let's go back to kids in foster care. So you have
sure.
kids in foster care that are in your home. Um, they have shared some of what you shared of like even foster care feels a little bit like um, normalizing uh, relationships that are built upon kind of transactional kinds of things. How would you advise a foster parent to say, here's what to do so it doesn't feel like that for that child, so that it doesn't make that feel normal? Do you
Sure.
understand my question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the things that my husband and I have done in in all of our placements, if possible, it is trying to get to know the birth family. I mean, just knowing that even if they can have no relationship until they're 18, I mean, some of those things of saying that your family is important to you, so they're important to me, right?
Hmm.
Um, just because they may have messed up doesn't mean that, you're a mess up or you're a screw up or you're an inconvenience. Um, I've asked kids when they're old enough, how do you want me to refer to you when we're out in public? Because there's some kids that really I just want you to say your kids. And that's all the kids. They don't want any distinction to be made between foster kids, bio kids, adoptive kids. And I'm like, "All right." And there's some that really are, I want people to know that I'm in foster care. Okay. Okay. But respecting those choices where you can respect them. In some cases you really have to respect that privacy, and I've had to explain that to kids like, "Hey, we're probably not going to announce that. I'll probably just say all of my kids just because it's, a different situation." But I think giving them as much freedom as you can to choose their clothing. Um, we have our daughter, we still have contact with some of her biological family. And to her, that is huge. That is huge. That it's not done. You have to leave that part of your life behind.
Hmm.
Um, so there's some things that when you think of that transactional piece of it, it is you're here because, not because we want you here, not because you're just part of the family, but we've told kids, foster kids that come in, once you're part of our family, you're always part of our family, which means that it's not an 18 years old and you're out. It is, we've had kids come back to our house with their parents and do play dates after they were returned home. And
Hmm.
I tell foster parents or people that are considering fostering, there will never be an experience like watching kids go back.
Mm.
Like when their parents are safe and they go back, and then to have the family come back into your home all together. Like it's yeah. And I
Yeah.
think rooting for the child,
Mm.
rooting for their parents.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard, but I think when kids see that, when you speak positively about the people that they love,
Hmm.
even when you're frustrated with them, that
Yeah.
it still shows them worth and value.
Mm.
Yeah, I think, yeah, gosh, those two words right there, that if the kids still feel like, I my life is worth it. I'm still valuable. Um, that that will help protect them from people who would want to uh, take advantage of them not feeling that way.
Yeah. What do you think about we're foster parents. We've been foster parents for 17 years, and right now we primarily foster teens. So we have a lot of these conversations about electronics and all this stuff. And we've taken the mindset. We tell them we are going to be honest with you. We are a very open family. We are honest. We're going to have these hard conversations. Um, what are your thoughts about maybe explaining to them in a healthy way a little bit about their vulnerability? Do you think that'd be helpful for them to understand kind of the realities behind electronics and stuff, and letting them know the vulnerability? And like a lot of the kids come into our home, like you had mentioned earlier, they've never had any sort of guidance on electronics, no rules,
Yes.
no looking into
Yes.
things, no. And so they do feel like we are being intrusive, and we are, they don't like the rules we have to set in place, but we tell
Oh,
them it's for
yes.
the good, but where's like that line of, I'm not trying to say your past, your mom didn't care for you because she didn't do these things. She just didn't know. But we do know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, how do we have those conversations and make them feel heard and seen, but also not judged?
Sure. I think sometimes when you're approaching that conversation, it's like starting it out with, you know what, kiddo, if you had genes, it like just you're predisposed to diabetes. You know what? As a caring woman in your life, you know what I would do? I would sit down with you and say, these things you need to watch out for. Why? Because you're predisposed, right? There's just some factors that play into you have an increased chance of fill in the blank, right? You have an increased chance. Um, one of the things that came out of the ACEs study, the childhood
Mhm.
experience studies, um, is that sometimes just people knowing, like, really, I'm predisposed to that, that makes so much more sense. But it also gave people power to say, well, I can fight against that. Absolutely, you can. Absolutely, you can. And so I think being honest and just saying, hey, these are some of the things that you may face. These are some of the stuff that, might come your way simply because of your past. It's not a fatalistic, oh, you were in foster care, I guess you're going to get trafficked or you're going to be exploited. But there's some things that come with that. And so just trying to, exploring that, um, just that sense, like, I want you to have the best life ever, the best life ever. And so I just want to set you up for success.
Good.
S- So Holly, I think I hope I'm quoting you correctly, because this is something I heard that you said to somebody else, and this somebody else told me that somebody else is Doris.
Okay.
Yeah, you're like, who in the world are you talking to? Is that you might have said, since virtually everybody who's listening to this isn't in law enforcement, if you want to make a difference in human trafficking, become a foster parent. Did you say that? Or
I did.
would
In
you say that
fact,
something like,
in fact,
okay,
I almost at every presentation that I do in the public, I will say, if you really want to make a difference, be a foster parent. Um, I think the stats show that over 60% of kids that are recovered from trafficking were in foster
yes,
care, had been in
yeah,
foster care. And so for a while, I chaired the Western South Dakota Human Trafficking Task Force. And I would have people approach me and just be like, oh, Holly, I want to get involved. My heart breaks. What can I do? And they wanted to be the person on the white horse that goes in and
Mhm.
rescues.
Mhm.
But when you, and my challenge to them was like, are you willing to reach them before they're trafficked? Because that's
oh,
what
I
it
love
takes to
that.
be. Like,
Yes,
instead of waiting
it
for the trauma to occur, why don't you just open your home and be a foster parent? And if you can't be a foster parent, be a wrap family. And if you can't, like, just do respite, everybody can do something. But
Yeah.
don't come
yes,
to me telling me that your heart breaks for trafficking when you're not willing to do at
willing
least
to
something.
to step up in front of it. Yeah, yeah, I understand people, they romanticize this rescuing thing, and the idea of stepping in and intervening before they're being trafficked
Yes.
and receiving them into your home, it's not sexy. It's hard.
So hard.
And so, but yeah, if you're sincere and wanting to help these kids, then that is what it takes. And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and everything you said totally makes sense as to why kids in foster care, who aren't being connected to a family with a lot of the advice that you've given, how they would be so vulnerable to these kind of, the fake family who is actually a predatory pimp.
If I could, you know, um, they talk about the safety net, and the best way I've heard it described is make a list of everybody that you could call if you broke down on the highway right now.
Okay.
Okay, make a
Hmm.
list of all the people. Now add to this list people that if you needed $500 that they would give it to you without question. Like, I just need 500 bucks. Yep, sure. Absolutely. I trust you. You can, here it is. Um, and they said, think of people that you could call and you're like, "Hey, I just need help. I just need to vent. Would you be willing to listen to me?" And basically what they put it, they're like, the longer the list is, the bigger your safety net is. Okay? That's that you knowing, if I fail and if I fall, something will catch me. Okay?
Mhm.
And they said, you're more likely to go out for sports, you're more likely to go to college, you're more likely to um to engage in healthy behaviors. You're also more likely to leave an abusive relationship,
Mm.
right? And I
Mm.
remember talking to the head of probation, and he made this comment about, Holly, some of the individuals. So I've been at ICAC for 10 years, but I cut my teeth counseling offenders. That's how I cut my teeth, starting when I was 20. Yeah, I actually did. I did mental status exams on death row and segregation in a supermax security prison, and I did sex offender treatment in a max security prison. So, but I was doing counseling with probation and parole. And he said, these individuals are so resourceful. He said, I have a young gal that's being supervised, and she wants to go to a funeral across the state. And he said she has no money, so she offered sexual favors to her neighbor. And he said, "Did she get to the funeral?" "Yep, he fixed her car." But again, when you have no safety net, the world gets super small, really, really small. And
Mm.
so when I encourage people, think about being a foster family in which you are the safety net and you
Mhm.
agree with this kiddo. Not only are we the safety net right now, we're going to be the safety net still when you're 30. When you call and you're like, man, I'm just struggling, I'm going to pick up the phone and answer it. Because I know that the bigger safety net you have, every kid that comes into our house calls everybody grandma, auntie, and uncle. Like, I mean, it's just, we have this huge family that it's once you're part of the family, you're always part of the family, because we believe that safety net feature. The more kids know that they have people fighting for them, the more secure they are in who they are. The more they're willing to stand up to somebody who tries to exploit them. Like, no, I
Yeah.
got 30 people who have my back. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, that actually reminds me of there's a book by a counselor named Bruce Perry, and the book's called "The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog," and it's about kids from mostly foster care. And he towards the end of the book talks about how 100 years ago or so that every child had, I forget, it's something like had a certain amount of adult relationships, safe adult relationships. And like, so I don't, again, I don't have the numbers exactly right, but like every child had 7 adult relationships that were safe. And nowadays, if you go take a child and put them in daycare, that number's reversed. Like, oh, we have 1 adult for every 10 kids. And so
That's so scary.
his point was the more adult relationships a child has, the safer they are.
Think
And
of how many kids age out of foster care with
yeah, with
none.
none. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
We
that
had a
breaks my heart.
teenage boy in our house last spring, and the first week he was with us, we're just driving around town, and he was having a really emotional day, and he just looked at me and he said, "Do you realize that I don't have one healthy adult relationship in my life, like somebody that I can trust from my past? Not one." And it just broke my heart. My kids were in the car, so it brought up, good conversation later with our kids as well. But he was with us not for that long period of time, but he was with us for long enough, a month in. We sat him down and we said, you made this comment in the car one day. Do you feel like you have at least one caring, healthy adult? And he kind of looked at us for a little while and he goes, I actually can name 5 now. And it wasn't just us. I mean, thankfully he did mention us, but he also mentioned the people. Like, we do what you said, Holly. Like, we realize that we can't do this all alone as foster parents. And so we find people to mentor, people to come alongside, people to take them and go play basketball. And those relationships, if they are meaningful, make just as much of an impact as we do as foster parents when they feel like they've got more people in their court that they can trust.
Definitely.
I know adults,
Definitely.
but none of them are healthy.
Yeah.
Well, Holly, I want to thank you for doing some incredibly important work and incredibly dark area of life that you're able to still have so much light and hope. And so grateful that there's people like you and people like you that do what you do. And I want to again highlight what you shared is that um, to our listeners, if you want to make a difference in the area of human trafficking, and that is an area that tends to get way more um, uh, awareness than compared to foster care, and that's an area that you care about, well, foster care is the place where you can step in and make a difference and hopefully, yes, prevent a child. That's better than rescuing, is preventing a child from being trafficked. And my encouragement to you is I would listen to this episode a few times just to keep hearing some new stuff each time that Holly shared. And and I have I wrote a book called Go Upstream, diving into the foster care to heal 10 social wounds. And this is one. And in that chapter, it does point out, just as Holly said, that the majority of rescued youth from trafficking had foster care experience. Now it's like, well, they were in foster care. It's like, yeah, but they were probably in a group home. They ran away. You can be a family for them, a for now family that gives them a trusting adult relationship. So again, Holly, thank you so much. So much wisdom to share. And again, I cannot believe the job that you have. And thank God for people like you.
Yes. It must be a
Thank you
tough
for
woman.
having. Well, I appreciate you guys putting this together. This is awesome. And I hope people I hope they get motivated to
Yeah.
not only foster, but to step up the protection on the kids in their home.
Yes. Thank you. That was said so well. Yep. Thank you.
Holly, do you have any online, like your classes that you put on? Are any of those recorded or anything that we could share with
I
our
don't
listeners?
have any recorded right now. We're looking to record one soon. We always say that, and then we get, slammed with cyber tips, and then we get crazy busy, and then we're not. But once I get it done, I will send it your way.
Awesome. We'll make sure we share that in our resources too. We provide resources, free resources, and links to people all the time, and would love to include that. So, yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the Foster Friendly Podcast. My name is Courtney Williams. I'm a solo host today. Usually there are two of us on here, but I have two guests, so it kind of evens out the numbers. But this is a follow-up episode. If you listened to the shocking and intense podcast that we had last week, likely you left there feeling a little overwhelmed and maybe a little bit like, oh crud, what do I do now to protect my home and to protect our children? So this is a great follow-up to that. Today, our guests, Chad and Kay, are going to help foster parents and parents in general answer the question, okay, we understand there's a problem. We understand sex trafficking, and we understand the crimes against children, especially vulnerable children and youth. But now how can we protect our home and the children that come into our home? Chad and Kay recently published and co-authored a book titled Cyber Smart Parenting, Protecting Your Child in the Digital Age. I have the book. I have a copy right here. I've read it. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But they also both have years of experience in cybersecurity and both helping individuals and enterprises in the ever-changing digital world, which is overwhelming. So welcome to the podcast, Chad and Kay.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, awesome to be here. Thank you so much.
So before we get into the serious talk, tell us just a little bit about yourselves and kind of what you do, maybe about your family. Kay, you could start.
Awesome. So, yes, my name is Kay David. I've been in cybersecurity for over 10 years now. I specifically work with tech enterprises and specialize with software and platform clients. So, I help to essentially protect different enterprises across software and platform industry to be able to secure their environment. And so, whenever my friends or families essentially say or hear that I'm in cybersecurity, the next question is usually, how do I help protect my kids? What can I do to protect my family? And so it helped to be able to come from that world and give some advice and tips. But there's only one of me, there's only one of Chad. So we wanted to put our brains together and have a little passion project to write this book. So really excited to be here, and I'll hand it over to Chad.
Thanks, Kay. So, Chad Ochluski, 16 years of cybersecurity experience. I primarily work in the public sector and K through 20 schools education, so K through 12 and higher education. I have a 4 and an 8-year-old, both little boys. So, I'm the dad in the group. Everything that you'll hear from me is really the things that I'm doing at home. I, I co authored the book with Kay because I got the same questions at Little League games and every PTA meeting I went to. So, it was really helpful to write this down and scale our ability to help individuals. So happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks again. And if you notice, I did not pronounce last names in the introduction. Usually we say last names, but I didn't even try. So thanks for saying it yourself.
Yeah, you'll have that.
Okay, so again, our listeners are primarily foster parents or people considering foster care. I've been a foster mom for 17 years. We have 9 children and have fostered over 80. So we've had a lot of kids come in and out of our house. A lot of kids that we've got a placement right now. A lot of teenagers come and go, and a lot of them just come with a parenting background or being parented with no, and I mean like zero parenting around electronics, zero safety precautions around electronics. And so then they come into our home and it's like, oh my goodness, we have things that we do, but now, they have devices that we don't have passwords to and all this stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this conversation today. That, and also keep in mind that a lot of our listeners are not brains like you guys. We don't understand a lot of stuff. And that's what I love about your book too, is it is very much in layman's terms. I understood the book, and if I can understand it, anybody can when it comes to technology. Yeah, just speak to the people like me who don't understand the stuff that you guys necessarily understand. So as we get started, Chad, can you explain what is a digital footprint and how can we help our children understand the seriousness of it? And again, keeping in mind kids that come into our home who have not had any parenting around this.
Yeah, and good point. And a lot of the things that we're telling folks in the book are things that we have to teach the kids at home because the teachers at school don't really have the time to teach the basics anymore. So they don't get into what a digital footprint is. A lot of these kindergartners and first graders are just handed Chromebooks and they're not told the basics. So it's kind of on us as parents, foster parents at home, to teach them some of the basics. The digital footprint is really anything that's left intentionally or unintentionally on the internet. So anytime you fill out a form for school, anytime you fill out a website application, you're leaving a little bit of a digital footprint. When grandma posts a picture of your newborn, digital footprint. Every picture that we post is a part of that digital footprint. So we like to inform people of how serious that can be when you think of a child's photo being put on the internet and how AI can manipulate that down the road or today, actually, and make that into a picture that isn't real. Or a child never really told us that they wanted their picture on the internet. So when they're 18, they've got this slew of information on the internet that they had really no say in. So we all need to be conscious of that. It's really exciting to post pictures. It's really exciting to post updates, but we're giving information to the bad guys, right? We can't really control it once it gets on the internet, and that's just something to really be aware of.
Yeah, it's overwhelming to even stop and consider that and think about that. I mean, I know for myself, I do post pictures of my kids. I don't allow people to be friends. I'm sure people can still find it, right? Like, even though I have
Hmm.
like private accounts and all that. And, I've used excuses before of I'm a foster care and adoption recruiter. So I'm trying to share our stories so other people get inspired. But I'm sure there's a lot of things that we can do to protect that even more if we are sharing pictures here and there. So, yeah. And again, I think you go into some of those, you give tips in your book too for parents behind this and things to consider and think about even deeper at a deeper level.
Adding a little bit of paranoia to the equation. Welcome
Yeah.
to our world.
Just a little, just a little. We don't want you wearing tinfoil hats for the rest of your life, but just a little bit of paranoia is always good.
Yeah. So, Kay, I also read your most recent blog post about how Australia introduced a ban on social media accounts for kids under 16. Why would you say they made that decision? And what does it tell us as parents or as Americans?
No, it's actually a great question. And now, because of that, the EU is also considering a similar ban, and they're starting to talk through it from the parliament perspective of what the enforcement would look like. So it is having more of a global impact. And part of the reason why Australia went forward with this is because they felt that the repercussions and just the risks for those who are under the age of 16 having access to these platforms was not worth the exposure. So, and there has been a really large debate, not only from the regulation in Australia and those who are pushing this forward, but also the kids themselves, those who are going to be impacted, the 16 and under. The counter argument is that it's their right to have access to these platforms because a lot of times it's a lot of like communication, socialization is happening through these platforms. And so there's actually a pushback for the enforcement of this new regulation from Australia. And so there's always pros and cons on both sides for consideration. And that can be something that families in the US consider is, how integrated is your child's life into these platforms? And if it is, have you talked with or even had initial conversations of, the different risks that exist online? For instance, like different predators or grooming methods that might exist, or the fact that a lot of kids are now interacting with AI and AI agents and chatbots, and they're having human connections, so to speak, human connections with these AI agents. I have a lot of friends that are teachers in the school system. And, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, one or two kids in their class would say that they're dating ChatGPT. Now they said that, 70-80% of their classroom says they're in a relationship with ChatGPT. So just thinking about not only the digital risks, so to speak, when you have your kids interacting with these platforms, but just the implications from a mental well-being and what kind of relationships are they learning on these platforms.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. It's overwhelming as a parent to think about, and they use those things in school. They use it in sports. Chad, I'm curious as a dad. I know your kids are a little bit younger, but right now, if you were to say my kids won't get social media until what age? What would you say?
I'm going for the age where it's a must, if you will. So I had a story from someone where they didn't give their son a cell phone until he went to a conference somewhere, and someone said, "Scan the QR code and fill out this form." He was the one child that had to go to the front of the room and use the instructor's laptop, I think it was. So at that point, he was like, "Okay, I guess we need this now." So unless it's a need for some social reason, some reason for school, I don't see a reason to give it to our kids any sooner than that need, is prevalent.
Yeah, and I'm finding
Teenagers.
that. Yeah, I'm finding that with sports teams, like they're all using Snapchat and other things to communicate, even the coaches. I'm like, is that even, for one, is that even appropriate? But for two, why are we making this the mandatory means of communication for our 12-year-olds? And so, and our kids, a lot of them haven't had it. And so I've had to tell the coaches, well, they're not having Snapchat at 12 or at 13. So you can privately message my child on a text message or me,
That's
because
completely
that's what we're
fair.
going to use.
Yeah, it's your right as a parent to set those ground rules with the staff that we're dealing with in sports and school. If they're using something that you think is unreasonable, it feels weird in your gut, go with it.
Okay, so again, our last episode guest talked a lot about sex trafficking and it tied to foster care. My co host, Brian Mavis, he's also the founder of America's Kids Belong. He recently released a book called Go Upstream, and it shares of the 10 social wounds that are directly affected by foster care. And one of those is sex trafficking. In his research, he found that anywhere from 60 to 75% of sex trafficking victims were in foster care at the time. Again, there's different research, but those are the numbers kind of across the states. Chad, we often think of like that's where my mind as a parent, especially foster care kids coming in who have trauma, who have hard things in their past. Like my mind goes there. But there are
Mhm.
a lot of other risks involved for kids besides the worst case of being trafficked. So, what are some other risks for kids when it comes to social media, when it comes to being online or the devices?
We touched on some of it with like the Snapchat and some of the social media. They get into these relationships with chatbots and things like that. But cyberbullying's a really prevalent one. So it could happen if someone doesn't even know that they're being a bully. These giant group chats doesn't even have to be on a platform. It could just be a classroom group chat. Things are said that are offensive to individuals, and these children don't know how to deal with that all the time. So we as parents have to have these conversations of who's a trusted adult, who can I talk to, and a lot of the book isn't while it's about cybersecurity, the foundation of it is the communication piece. So all these risks that we mentioned in the book, outside of some of the ones we're talking about now, setting that foundation of I'm your friend in this equation. You can trust me and talk to me, or talk to the teacher. They're a trusted adult as well. But we need to set that foundation of communication in order to explore some of these risks.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that too is, we get a lot of questions of what technical controls can I put in place on these platforms to help prevent, unnecessary exposure to mature content. And there's a lot of different settings and configurations you can do. A lot of times actually to be like most up to date is you can Google, how do I secure Snapchat? What should I know as a parent? What are the like settings I should have before my kid downloads it or I give a phone to my child for Snapchat or any other platform you're really considering. So there's a lot of technical controls out there. But from the other side, really one of the best parental controls you can have is really strong communication. And what that means is making sure that your child knows they're not going to get in trouble with you if they come to you about something that maybe their gut doesn't feel right about or they're having a conversation with a stranger that just doesn't sit well with them. So some of the risks that are on there is, cyberbullying, as Chad put it. but also, strangers interacting with your child, or your child accidentally interacting with someone they think is their friend, but is actually not their friend and potentially could even be a deep fake. So being able to have the ability for a trusted adult for them to go to report it is one of the best controls you can have in place.
Yeah, so that leads into my next question. And I do think, I mean, relationship and open communication is probably the number one best thing you could do as a parent or a caregiver, right? Is having that open communication. Besides giving away all your great ideas that you have in your book, if you were going to be like, what is the number one thing that parents can do besides that relationship and communication to protect their home? What would be like a must that you would say?
In our book, actually on page 77, we have an activity. We designed the book for it to be torn up. So we actually have a digital contract on page 77, and the idea is for you to rip it out and go through it with your child to be able to say, hey, let's talk through what rules we have in place and why, and come to an agreement as to, what can we mutually decide is right for our family. So I think that's a must, is going through the why with your child, to be able to say, well, this isn't just because I say so. It's we both agreed, no phones in the bedroom. And we know that because X, Y, and Z. And so everyone in this house doesn't take their phone into their bedroom. So that's my golden rule, number one rule. But hopefully maybe I beat you head to it. I'm interested now. What do you think?
I tell folks that the minute your child is born and they're handed a social security number, or, as a foster parent, you get a child into your home, they also have a social security number. They're now vulnerable for their identity to be stolen. And as a minor, they can't just log on to Equifax, TransUnion, the like, all three of the major credit bureaus and lock their own credit. You, as their caregiver or parent, have to do that. Takes like 4 hours. I did all the research and did it for my two boys and locked their credit because in my state, the student information system was breached and a bunch of students' identities were stolen. Imagine turning 18 and going to open up your first credit card and realizing that your credit has just been completely ruined and you had no idea because you weren't on a watch list. And even if you were on a watch list, maybe you weren't informed. We have a blog on the website, cybersecurityparents.com, that I've documented everything that I did and continue to document every time I lock down a new device that I give my children. But I've made it a little bit easier for folks if you want to explore locking credit. It's probably the smartest thing to do. There's a lot of detection and monitoring that we can do with some of the platforms when they're breached. You get that free detection service, but this locks it, like straight locks it. If someone goes to apply for a credit card with your child's information, social security number, any of that, date of birth, all that personally identifiable information, they're not going to be able to. Safest thing to do.
I have a family member whom I know, when they were children, they had a parent take out loans in their name, and
Hmm.
they didn't find out till they turned 18, and car loans. And it makes me even think even deeper with foster care, because we often are dealing with mental health. We're often dealing with angered parents. We're often dealing with parents who are struggling financially. And so it just makes me think, like, I wonder, how many have used their kids. And so we probably couldn't do that as foster parents, but definitely something to keep in mind and even teach them about, right? Because some of them are so vulnerable themselves where they'll sign off on things or not think about the ramifications of things before,
Yeah.
25, when your brain's more developed.
I'll have to do some research on the. I'll admit it that I'm not too familiar with the foster side of caregivers' rights in that situation. So, as a parent, I had to send in a copy of my driver's license just to prove that, like, this is a child that I am responsible for. So,
Yeah.
I'd say still explore the blog, and y'all, as foster parents, know way more about the system than I do. But at least there's some steps spelled out there that you could possibly explore.
Yeah.
And as I'm thinking just on the fly, something that could be interesting is, if you're not able to freeze their basically social security, their credit, maybe even at least doing a free credit check with their
Hmm.
social security, because that'll be indicative of, maybe it it should be a good score, one would hope. But if it is a really low score, it might be because someone's already taken out a loan, a mortgage, something on that social security number. So that way, at least the child's informed and aware and can take actions to say, hey, look, this is what's going on with my social security. And I don't necessarily think I believe this can be a fact check moment, but the child might be able to even do the credit score rating themselves, potentially, if they know their social security. So that's one thing I'm just thinking on the fly that maybe
Yes.
foster parents can do.
Yeah. And again, educating, right? Educating these kids who come into our home.
Exactly.
This big thing. So, okay, let's chat more about foster parents. In most states, there's something that's called the Bill of Rights, the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. In our area, the Bill of Rights is for all foster youth, but so it doesn't have an age on it. So we don't know, does it start at 5? Does it start at 12? I mean, it's the Bill of Rights, but one of the things on our Bill of Rights is that they have the right to electronics. They have a right to a phone to communicate with their family members. And the heart behind that makes sense, right? If kids are, torn apart from their families, if they're apart from grandma, mom, dad, brother, whomever, we want them to have communication with them. But of course, the kids and care and even their lawyers will fight for them, meaning, oh no, all 10-year-olds have a phone. So this 10-year-old should have a phone or whatever it might be. And again, it looks different case by case because different lawyers will fight for different things for the kids. Different kids will ask for different things. Caseworkers, all the people involved, it just gets really sticky. So one thing that I found though is we have kids that come into our home with these phones. Again, usually not password protected, usually no parental controls, usually no education behind it. And foster families don't understand that you can push back in the sense of, yes, they might come with a phone, but that doesn't mean that you can't have your own rules in your home, that you can't say, we're going to leave our phones on the kitchen counter at night or not have electronics in bedrooms or whatever it might be. People just think that that means that they have free reign. You could even set passwords and talk to the caseworker and be like, hey, I'm not going to allow this in my home unless we have a password and we know the password to get into this phone or whatever it might be. But one of the big things that we've had an issue with is the location settings because these kids come into our care. We had this 17-year-old young man come into our home. In the first 24 hours, we're getting to know him. He's telling us about his gang relations. He's telling us about people who are out to get him. And first day in our home, we look outside. We live in the country. We live out in the mountains in the country. But we see this guy walking up our driveway and he looked like he was up to no good. And so my husband goes outside and starts chatting and he's like, oh, I'm here to see so and so. And long story short, they had his location on some sort of thing, comes to our house. We didn't know if this is one of these guys you're just telling us is out to get you. We don't know if this is a friend. So we had to have it explained to him, like, this isn't okay. But it raised these huge alarm bells in our minds of how many other kids have been in our home who we're not thinking location settings, right? Like, is there anything that you guys know of that we can do to protect, like in a case like that? Like, do we have to have their password for every social media site to shut off the locations? Do we have to, we don't have the control of a lot of it. So is there anything you guys can think of how we can protect our home or things that we can utilize for the home setting where we might not have access to their accounts?
Yeah. So, but you do have access to, you can get your hands on their device. I'd say do a tech audit. So, understanding when we say tech audit, it's more broadly of like what are all the different pieces of technology that they're touching. But in a phone, I mean, that's just layers of technology. You can go into an Apple device and see all the different location service that have been recently used or not used by application. And some of them need it, some of them don't. And this starts with the conversation of understanding application granting permissions whenever they're installed, especially for younger children. Does this application need to take a picture with a location and have access to your microphone and have the yada, 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 all the other settings? Probably not. If it's a picture app, it just needs to be able to take pictures. So let's not give it all the permissions in the world or allow it to follow your metadata from application to application. But all that to say, there's a conversation to be had up front about limiting access, and you can go on a device and see which applications are using location services and turn that off.
If you're able to get access to their phone and just see what applications are doing location sharing and maybe talk through like, okay, do you really need to have like Snapchat know where your location is when you're talking with your friends? And it'll show you, depending on the device, all the different applications where a location sharing has been allowed or permitted. And then again, I would just kind of talk through because a lot of times it can be like, well, I want to stay in contact with my friends. I want them to know where I am. And like, you don't have the right to tell me I can't do that. And so having the conversation of, look, I totally get it. You have a connection somewhere else. You have your friends. You want to stay in contact with them. I 100% understand that. But can you trust all these friends that they're not going to try and do you harm? For instance, in your situation, the 17-year-old knew that there was going to be people that are tracking and monitoring his location with the intention of potentially causing him harm. So being able to say, is that really someone you want to be sharing your location with? And you can't limit it for who you're sharing with on certain applications you're sharing with the world. So being able to have those conversations as to why it's important to really reduce your exposure from your family, Courtney, your family's exposure and safety, but also, the foster child that's staying with your family. And then just being able to say, look, if there's certain trusted adults or trusted friends that you're like, I really need them to know where I am for my own mental well-being. I want at least someone I really trust, especially maybe it's a new relationship, the new child coming into your home and they're like, I don't know you yet. I don't trust you. I'm still trying to figure it out. This person that lives in Chicago knows me. I know them, and I just want them to know where I am at all times. There are certain ways to be able to say, okay, then let it so that they can always be sharing the location with that trusted adult, trusted person, but it just being that one person, not the
Mm.
entire world. So those kind of conversations to show that, hey, look, I get it. We might still be getting to know each other. You're still trying to suss me out, so to speak. If you have a trusted adult or trusted friend, go ahead and share your location with them for just like this one location, so to speak, like on just this one application. So they always know where you are and you know that you can trust them. But let's not make it so the entire world knows, because then like there could be some mal or terrible actors that are trying to find you, and we're just trying to protect you. So it's a long-winded way that goes back to like having the conversation as to why, so that the communication goes both way with both you and the foster child.
And you asked about the home, Courtney. It's harder with cell phones because they have their own cellular signal. But if you're using a device that's on Wi-Fi, and before you go out and buy some fancy router, everyone should check their router and see if it has parental controls. You can lock down what types of things happen through your router that go out to the internet. You can block certain websites. You can restrict the router to only go to certain websites. But that's something we haven't gotten the opportunity to write a very advanced blog about that yet. We want to. We're going down that route, but we have to pick our favorite router to do so.
Yeah.
There are some basic things that everyone can do with whatever you have, though.
And Kay, you mentioned earlier about behavior or electronic contracts, but I think that's another way that foster parents can understand. Again, yes, they might have a right to their devices, but you have a right to make a electronic contract. I mean, on
Hmm.
that contract, even saying something like, phones will be checked unannounced, and location services might be something that I'm checking for. And if you are turning these on, and we've agreed that you are not, then phone might be taken away for however long. But again, just those are things that foster parents can do that I don't think they always realize that they can set these rules. They can have a contract. They can discuss. Can you guys think of anything else that would be pertinent to have on a contract? Maybe thinking specifically to foster youth or kids who have never had parental controls before.
I would say one thing is really important is like a safety word. So that way your foster child knows like maybe they're still like, they're in touch with bad relations from their past, and they want to find a way to be able to come to you without maybe showcasing that they're in trouble. So having a family safety word is really important. And coming up with it so that way they know that no matter what, if they say, yeah, no, can you pick up like the cherry soda? I don't know. I'm just giving you an example, then like, okay, so something's going wrong. Cherry soda is our safety word. And you come to that agreement to say, hey, you always will have this safety word. If something's coming up online and someone's near you that you just don't trust, you can always call me or text me and say our safety word together. I think that's a really important one, especially also with like, deep fakes are becoming really relevant, where they're getting, voicemail, going to voicemail, taking the recording from the voicemail and re-engineering so that it sounds like someone's in trouble and calling you. And so being able to test it and say, is this really Courtney? What's our safety word? And that's way it's like it's a deep fake.
The safe word's an important one. Safe word, passphrase. It also goes into like the passwords and how they're developed. I think it's discussed on the contract, but understanding what a safe password is, it's not password 1 2 3 4. Like
Mm.
let's be a little bit more advanced here. Let's use some multi-factor authentication when it's available. Explaining those technological controls to children will help protect them in the long run. Um, but yeah, the passphrase is my favorite. I'm not going to tell you what mine is. Otherwise, I'd have to change it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and it is a great, I've never thought about that before, to be honest. With our foster youth, we do have a phrase that often we've used, if they're in a situation, Christmas time with my family and a lot of people around and they're like, hey, I need out right now. We have our little
Yeah.
things or hand motions that they might do for something like that, but not thinking about it for electronics in that sense. So that's a great idea. I think we often also think about just phones. That's probably the primary one. I think, there's just so much that they can get into. Like I said, most foster youth come with a phone, so it becomes a big issue. But we think about phones and computers. I think, okay, I have to know about their phone, I have to know about the computer. But are there other devices within the home where we really need to be safeguarding and thinking about things that they might be able to get into or whatnot on besides
Yeah.
just a phone or a computer?
Yeah. So I went on a trip recently and it was a very long one to another country. And I said, I'm going to need a fire tablet for this. There's just no way that a 4 and 8-year-old are going to hold still for that long. So, fire tablet, access to the internet. If a device has access to the internet, it's probably got chat capabilities. It has a web browser on it where they could go to websites. So I locked down Kindle Fire, uh, Nintendo Switch, same thing. Everyone thinks it's just, playing video games. There are some risks within those video games of talking to strangers and chat capabilities. But again, at the same time, if it connects to the internet, it probably has a browser on it and it could probably go to a website. So a lot of folks don't think about those things, but check anything that has access to the internet and do a little tech audit on that device to see what else it can possibly do. You can shut some of those things down. My sons have never used their devices with the internet turned on. I load everything up, and if they're playing a game and it needs access to the internet, I guess it's time to stop playing that game for the day. Move on to the next game because we don't need access to the internet. It's not necessary for these games to be fun, if you will.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So when I visited Chad's house and was hanging out with his family, his kids already started being able to use some of these devices that had to get locked down was the voice activation devices that you might not necessarily think about. So the Hey Google or Hey Alexa,
Hmm.
thinking about I think for comical purposes, your kids had learned how to say, "Hey Google, make like fart noises." And so
Yeah,
the
that happens all day around here.
repercussions, yeah, the repercussions were relatively low. It was just Chad's sanity, so that's already gone. But I think thinking about, to Chad's point, anything connected to the internet, which is so much. But one of the things you might miss is the voice activation. So anything that's connected to your house where it is voice activated, being aware of what information is connected. So really, it's not a, hey Google, what's my Amex again? But thinking through, what do you have access to through that voice activation? And the other big one is always like any type of gaming consoles that are connected to the internet. That would probably be like a big priority due to the fact that there is a lot of online gaming apps that have anonymous chat groups or chat rooms. And so just being aware of, if they're playing their Xbox or PlayStation, if you have it at home or they bring something into the house, even as simple as a tablet, just being able to say, hey, I'd love to be able to look at the type of apps you have on there, just because there's a lot of scary people out in this world. And I want to make sure that you're able to talk to your friends and who you know. And let's make sure that the people you don't know aren't communicating with you or trying to find you.
And let's go into the voice activation thing for a second because I'm sure everyone's freaking out right now with their Alexas and Siris and Googles, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's listening." It is, but
Mhm.
you can lock it down so it only listens to your voice and not your children's. After a certain hour in the day, my sons can say whatever they want, and it'll say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that right now because I shut it down for the day. It's past bedtime. I'm not gonna hear you talking to your assistant late into the evening." And then a fun
No more
anecdote.
fart noises. Yeah, after 9
Nope, it's
p.m.
just time to go to
Yeah.
bed. But when Alexa first came out, I accidentally ordered a 9-foot Christmas tree, folks. And it's that easy, right? Like you have to be careful sometimes, but I needed it. It was fine. I still use it every year. But I said, "Let find me a 9-foot Christmas tree for my living room because I just moved in." And next thing I knew, I had a Christmas tree on my front porch. So be careful out there.
Yeah, it just makes me think of a couple other, even just protection, but also monetary. We had a foster youth
Yeah.
one time. I mean, our kids were a little bit younger, and we had protections that, but we didn't think about having like a password on our Amazon Prime. And Foster Youth got up in the middle of the night and ordered the whole Freddy series and a whole bunch of scary movie series, like multiple ones, charged over $300 to our Amazon Prime account in the middle of the night. And I was like, good thing I caught that, but too
Hmm.
late, type thing.
Yeah.
And then also the apps. There are so many apps now that I had no clue have chat functions and chat rooms. Even
In-app
like
purchases too.
the Bible app has chat now. Pinterest has become social media, like all these things that you think are one thing, but you got to know what they're doing on these devices and on these apps. So, okay, devices, apps, technology. I honestly just get super overwhelmed. Honestly, my husband and I got in an argument about this yesterday because I feel like he doesn't check the phones enough. And he's like, but that's like, you're the stay-at-home mom. So it's kind of your job. And it overwhelms me. I mean,
Yeah.
it brings a lot of tension in families. It brings a lot of like overwhelming feelings of I'm not doing enough. And it's changing. It's ever changing. I feel like I said, like the Pinterest, what Pinterest used to be is not what Pinterest is today. And I wouldn't have known had my teenager not shown me. How can we stay up to date and educated on all these changes that keep on happening if it's not our jobs like it is for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because the good thing for Chad and I is it makes it so we constantly have to learn and be up to date and know what the new technology is and how threat actors can leverage it. And it makes sure that we stay employed for a very long time. But for a family that's super busy, you're like, okay, I checked the application yesterday. I think I'm good. And then you're like, they had an update, a system update today. And now I can on Pinterest talk to someone and you didn't even know about it. So I guess the first thing I would advise is take a breath because it is overwhelming 100%. We're not saying that it's not. And just being able to try and do even just one step at a time is something. So nothing's ever going to be perfect. There's always going to be new technology updates. So taking a breath and saying, hey, look, I'm never going to probably be as up to date as the technology and accepting that unless you have an in with every single platform and application and their product engineering team and they call you and say, Courtney, by the way, we're going to have a system update tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Like just check the app, which then I think your phone is going to be ringing all the time. One thing you can do though is either depending on your time and capability is just say, I'm going to do a quick check once a month and just basically say, okay, I have these 20 applications that I know is on the child's phone. So let me just see if there's been any more applications they've added. So now it's a list of 25. And candidly, just using a Gemini, a ChatGPT, a Claude, whatever technology you want to do, you can say, hey, these are the applications. Can you please tell me if there's been any system updates and put it into a list? And that way it does the research for you. And it can say, hey, yes, this application Snap had a system update on October 11th. And this is the new features that you can do. These are the privacy settings you can do. Otherwise, you're going to be doing so much Google searching of every individual application. You want to try and streamline it. There's always what we call in tech a hallucination with these. So sometimes it'll say information that's not real, but at least it's a starting point. So then you can say, all right, I'm going to open up the Snap and see, this system change made it so that you can talk to strangers online. So we're going to set it down based off of these privacy settings. So doing like a monthly audit just to be able to see. Otherwise, if you try and do daily or weekly, you might actually go insane.
Yeah.
So just doing a monthly is the recommendation. But if you're like, I don't even have time to sleep, I can't even do a month. Okay, that is fine. As long as you're trying is always a great step. Maybe it's once every 3 months or once every 6 months. It might not be always the most up to date, but at least you're trying to check in and stay on top of it as best as you can and that what time allows. So that would be my recommendation.
That's great. And a great use of AI, right? Talk
In
about
a
that.
good way. Exactly. So, just throw it in there and it'll aggregate a lot of the information available for you. So that way you're not going, all right, number one application, let me Google. Number two application, let me Google. Number three, you're gonna go crazy. So just try and put it into one centralized chat bot or chat experience that is able to aggregate all the online findings for you and provide recommendations. again, just as a starting point, and then do your own due diligence where you try it out, and be aware that sometimes it is misinformation or what we call a hallucination where it's an error, but that's okay. At least you're trying, and that's like the best step you can take.
Always fact check your AI. I mean,
Yeah.
the amount of
Always.
times I have that conversation, I make my chatbots tell me exactly where they got the information from. Because most of the time, they're just trying to make you happy as an end user and give you a bunch of information that's completely fake.
Yeah.
So, just like you used to write your papers in college and high school, it can provide references and tell you exactly where it pulled it from. So, be aware of that.
Okay, again, thinking about our audience, thinking about your book, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners regarding cybersecurity, protecting the home?
Yeah, on the book front, I hope everyone can go out and get a copy. If you go to cybersecurityparents.com, there's several different ways to buy it. The primary way is Amazon. Once you get it, at the end of every chapter, there are 4 quick tips, 5 to 20 minutes, things that you can check off as your child gets older. There's also little mini posters in the back that, based off of your child's age, you can have specific conversations. There's an elementary one, middle school, and high school. The conversation drastically changes over the years from, hey, buddy, what's a password? To, hey, you're about to apply for a job. Let's do an audit on your online presence and what that looks like to make sure that you're all set there. But the book definitely helps break those down by age range, um, to help you feel less overwhelmed because it is a heavy lift. This takes time. I'm still working through the book as my child grows up, but it's nice to have that tool sitting on my desk to be able to reference it from time to time.
And it's like I said, it's written for people like me. It's written in a way that you can understand, but I do love all the conversation starters, all the tips, and breaking even down by these are quick things you can do. These are things that might take a little bit longer. Very, very practical.
And I was just going to say, if there's questions that your listeners have that maybe we haven't covered, we love questions. So being able to go onto our website or emailing us directly. So our website is cybersecurityparents.com, but you can contact us at info@cybersecurityparents.com. And if you have a question, write it in, and maybe we can even make it into a detailed blog post, or we'll email you back with some tips and tricks. So if we didn't cover something that's on top of people's minds, then info@cybersecurityparents.com is a great way to just ask us a question, and we'll do our best to answer it.
That's great. And thanks for sharing. And the blog, which is also found on your website, the blog, I've read quite a few of them. Again, helpful and just great topics to kind of breeze through and like, oh, which one of these pertain to me? And maybe even something you can do. Set a reminder once a month. Check out the blog and see if there's something that pertains to you that you can, like I said, I get overwhelmed by this because it does seem like it's just so much and ever changing.
It's
But
like
there are
never
things that we can
ending.
do.
Technology is never ending. Unless you decide to like switch to carrier pigeons for communications from now on. It's like constantly changing.
There are some, I don't know if you noticed, there's in October, we did some gamification of cybersecurity and made it spooky, fun games for elementary age kids. We're going to release a new one that's for all year round. It's not specific to Halloween, but if your kid loves word searches, mazes, coloring, give them things like this to talk about cybersecurity. It's great when they're word searching for the word password and they're like, all right, you found password. What is a password? So you can have those conversations just by gamifying it a bit, which is a lot of fun.
Well, Chad and Kate, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with our listeners. Like I said, we don't want to scare people, but a little bit is okay. A little bit is good. It's good to
Just
be in
a
the
little.
know
Yeah.
and good to have practical resources and tips and tools, things that we can really do in our homes. And again, thinking about these kids who come with just hard backgrounds and hard stories. And if we can do something to make their future a little bit better, even when it comes to understanding electronics, understanding the healthy ways of using them, that is something we need to be considerate of as foster parents. So I think you guys did a great job of helping us understand. So thanks again for joining us today. Now you see why I said this is a heavy topic. I do hope that you really enjoyed the first webinar in our navigating series. Come back for more because we have more that will be released. Not exactly monthly, but every 3 to 4 weeks or so, we will have a new webinar released through this series. Again, thank you to our guests, Holly, Chad, and Kay. I sure you love these conversations, and I really hope that you got a lot out of it. I hope that you have left with tools and just an understanding of how we need to be proactive to protect our homes, protect the kids that are in our homes, and to be great parents when it comes to this ever-changing digital world. I also want to just tell you that we are a nonprofit. We live off of donations from people like you. If you have enjoyed our webinar series, if you utilized a lot of them for your trainings, I would love it if you would be willing to do like a $25 donation towards America's Kids Belong, just to help fund this mission and help us keep doing this to make webinars like this possible. So you can scan that QR code with your camera app, or you can go to our website and click on donate, americaskidsbelong.org, click donate, and make your tax deductible gift. Thank you for considering. And then I know a lot of you are probably here because you need some CE credit. As always, our form is found on our website, fostercon.org, or if you're on the AKB website, scroll all the way to the bottom, click on FosterCon. Right there, you can fill out a form. You will need to fill out a new form for every webinar that you watch. And then you will get emailed within a week or so a form for yourself and or your spouse, but make sure you fill one out. Each spouse, each partner fill one out individually. And it is our mission at America's Kids Belong to improve the experiences and outcomes for kids in foster care. And we have many great programs. So if you're not aware of the work we do, go to our website. You can check out these things. Our I Belong project is our project where we do filming for kids who are in need of adoptive homes. FosterCon's what you're part of today, our foster friendly podcast. I highly suggest you check it out. I even use some of those for my training for our ongoing credits. My husband and I for foster care, they let us listen to some podcasts and then, say what we learned. It's another great way to get your hours if your agency or county will let you do that as well. Foster Friendly Communities is an initiative around the United States where we are encouraging communities to become foster friendly. And you can learn more about that again at our website, americaskidsbelong.org. And then lastly, we have our newest, it's called Fostering Front Door. This is the place to go if you're considering fostering, already fostering, considering adoption through foster care. It has pretty much every question you can consider and has answers and resources for all those things. If you know somebody who's considering foster care or adoption, send them there to our Fostering Front Door. You can find it on our website. Just click foster, adopt, or support, and you will be able to get you'll go to that database of questions and resources beyond resources. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Thank you for being with us, and come back for more.